Well, hello everyone and welcome to our HPO chat today. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our composer today, who we've been wanting to work with for quite some time. She's a prominent composer in Canada and she hails from New Zealand, where she is also having her music enjoyed there. And she is the artistic director of Urban Vessel, and we are performing her piece Fire Break today online for the very first time. So could you please join me in welcoming Juliet Palmer? Hello, Juliet. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's wonderful to
Hi.
see you. And the last time I saw you in person was in mid-March last year, when we had rehearsed your piece, Fire Break, for the very first time the day before. And you were there to hear it that day on the Friday when everything was turned topsy-turvy. And I just wanted to ask how you are and how have things been going for you this year.
Yes. Wow. That was for me, it was like a very dramatic start to the pandemic of about to hear this orchestra piece and then whoosh, it got whisked away. And here we are over a year later. And I haven't been inside a concert hall that whole time. I haven't really heard any live music other than the music that I've been making at home. So, it'll be wonderful to hear this, video version of Firebreak, but I am so looking forward to being in a concert hall with human beings playing music, listening to music together. I think we're all really hungry for that.
Absolutely. We can't wait. And we can't wait to perform Firebreak in person on stage. We have big plans for it very soon as possible, to get back on stage for our Hamilton audience. And it has been a pleasure to prepare this piece with all our players in their homes, and they've recorded their part and then we've put it together. And now we're about to hear it. I just thought, before we hear the music, could you tell us a little bit about the inspiration of the piece?
Yes. So, I mean, again, everything seems a lifetime ago, but I finished this piece at the end of 2019. And I don't know, I mean, people remember there were these raging forest fires in many parts of the world at that point. There was huge fires in Australia, in the Amazon. We had fires on the west coast of North America. And it happened that I'd also been on an artistic residency with a wonderful visual artist, Carla Bengtson, who's American. And this was in Oregon, the summer of 2019. And we were at a research place called Andrews Forest, which is running a 200-year-long residency for artists and scientists. So we were really lucky to be there to work on another project called Every Word Was Once an Animal. And I was really struck interacting with these trees. They're these huge, ancient Douglas firs, and just the richness of the forest. But also we went to some sites where there had been, in the last few years, very serious forest fires. And you see these lodgepole pines that are just sort of silhouetted against the sky. They're just charred and blackened, and the ground around them is pretty bereft of life. So I was doing a lot of field recording when I was there, and I was working with the choreographer Darian Smith for score for that other project. But I was listening again to those recordings, and there's some beautiful sounds that I felt I really want to dig deeper into them. And so some of them there were stumps of old cedar trees in a reservoir. So the level of the water would rise up, and that forest had died. And so when the water recedes, you're left with these silvery cedar stumps. And I started bowing them with a stick and picking up the sounds with a contact microphone. And it sounds like crazy sort of saxophones, or you can imagine what kinds of instruments they are. But anyway, that harmonic material informs this piece, Firebreak, as well as sort of rhythmic improvisations that we did on other massive trees that are lying down in the forest. They're dead, but they're actually full of life for the next generation of plants, animals, trees that are going to rise up from the forest. So it's a piece that's a tribute to forests. There you go.
Awesome. I love how it's the narrative of the trees, and you can hear them singing. So let's all enjoy Firebreak by Juliet Palmer. Thank you, Juliet, for your intriguing, just it's magnificent music. I love how it takes me through time, and I feel an ancientness to these stories. And I also love that there's different atmospheres or scenes, maybe different forests that come along as you go maybe through the mountain trail. Everyone has their own picture in mind when they listen to your music, so I don't want to impress anyone. My own, story, but it really is so evocative. And I wondered if you could explain a little about your composition process and about maybe the language, because the way you write for orchestra, you've made them groaning, singing, growling trees, and it completely transformed the way that we hear the orchestra. And maybe you can tell us a few secrets about how you did that.
Yeah, for sure, Gemma. So some of the things that are happening, there are these very sort of short, sharp attacks. So that might happen with like a snap pizzicato. And in my mind, I'm imagining sort of the energy of popping, of exploding air and moisture in a tree that's on fire. So I start with sort of images. You don't have to have the same image when you hear it, but that sort of inspires me. And then oftentimes the strings, so they might be sliding between pitches. And so when you get those very tight, close harmonies, you start to get a real intensity and I don't know, it's like Gemma was saying, the way we sort of move through time and it starts to be like a voice that's keening. There are other sounds in there. I was really struggling to kind of, well, it's a good challenge to try and translate a sound that a tree makes into something that an instrument makes. And so I was playing around with the friction of the bow on the strings. So when you can drag the bow up the cello strings and get this really wonderful sort of creaky, gritty sound. And then other times when just using the tip of the bow to move sort of swoosh, 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 swoosh against the strings to get more airy sounds. So it's a lot of fun. I am so looking forward to being in rehearsal in person where you can try these things out. I think it's amazing what everyone in the orchestra did in their own homes, following the score because it's very collaborative when you bring music to life. And I love being part of that collaboration. So I felt a bit sad I missed out on that, but it will happen. It will happen in person. So
yes,
there's a lot of experimentation.
Turn the whole concert hall into a forest of very tall trees, sometimes in distress, or I hear quite a bit of maybe the smoke and the ash as well after the fact.
Yeah, there's definitely, I feel like there's an arc to the piece of this kind of fiery beginning, and then it's more the smoke and the ash in the middle, and then sort of a classical thing, then it's sort of resurgence at the end. So that's a very simple narrative arc that's in there. And actually, when I was listening to the recording, I was imagining some of the beautiful video that another contributing artist on the other project, Jessie Rose Valla, shot in that forest of these very slow pans of lodgepole pines against the sky, and then light flaring in the camera lens. So, there's a lot of room. I was thinking, I want to make a music video.
Yeah, and we did. And,
in
a way, obviously, it's been a collaboration. And I wonder, also I saw, you had the timpani with some special effects, as well as the horns. And I wondered if you could detail those a little bit for our audience as well.
Yeah.
As they see our players close up play those interesting gurgling or shimmering sounds.
Yeah, so the timpani is doing a couple of things. I mean, there's glisses where you're playing your timpani, and while you're adjusting the pedal, so the pitch is shifting. And then also having a cymbal on top of the timpani so that you get that cymbal sound. I can't remember if he's bowing or doing a roll on it, but with that same glissando, the same shifting in pitch. And at another point, he's got Super Bowl mallets, which are, like those little Super Bowls that bounce, and but they're on a stick. And as you rub it across the skin of the timpani, it makes a kind of moaning sound, very unearthly and weird creature sound. And I think with the horns, it's mainly a lot of sliding between pitches, I think, is what they're up to. I don't think they're doing anything too wacky, unless I've forgotten.
That's great.
I love the sliding. I love sliding between the notes.
Yeah. It's very dramatic, all the popping, especially at the beginning, and then you get a more like restful feeling, maybe maturity as you've experienced that journey. By the end of it, I feel quite at peace. Thank you, Juliet, for your music. And I wondered, you come from New Zealand, if you could tell us a little bit about perhaps what brought you to loving music and nature, evidently.
Yes. I mean, I'd like to make some family connections there. So my grandmother was a singer and a pianist. She taught singing and piano. And in fact, what I love about her too, even in her 80s, she was having piano lessons. She was learning new pieces, like right up into her early 90s, I think, until her vision sort of prevented her from that. And then my aunt and my mother, they're both very musical. And then in terms of loving nature, I mean, it's sort of well, not every New Zealander does that, but it's a country that really embraces the outdoors. And so, yeah, childhood, we would go camping and tramping, or what we call hiking here. And my grandfather he was a banker, but he was a keen conservationist and an amateur ornithologist. So I remember going on holiday to see my grandparents and going on these amazing walks with my grandfather where he could hear birds and know what they were without seeing them. And he was very involved in saving a bird nesting habitat in Nelson, which is where he retired. So it was called the Boulder Bank. And we would walk out across the mud flats to this bird nesting site that he and a bunch of other people campaigned for and saved. So yeah, so that's family roots, I'd say.
Are you from Nelson in New Zealand, or?
No, where was I born? I was born on the Kapiti Coast,
Cool.
my father was in the Air Force, so we moved every 2 years or so. So I grew up all over New Zealand, and then in Singapore. I was there altogether for about 5 years, and then lived in London for a year as well. So
Wow.
family roots in lots of different places: Napier, Christchurch, Auckland.
Great. You've seen it all. And there's a lot of beautiful nature in Canada as well, which I'm sure, and as far as in Oregon and Australia. You must have been there as a New Zealander. It's just a hop over the little river there in between. So
I was going to say one of my favorite things to do in Canada is I'm really into canoeing and camping. So we do a lot of backcountry canoe trips, which fortunately we have been able to do during the pandemic. So I've really, really relished those.
That sounds so amazing. I would love to join you one day.
Yeah, it would be fun.
Kayaking in New Zealand, up in Coromandel, I've done it before and really enjoyed it. And to see that nature outside, you really bring it into the concert hall and make it come alive, Juliet. And last question I wanted to ask you was a little bit about your compositional process. I gather that during this piece, you took a notebook about how the compositional process was going, and what kind of research you did for it. And I know we've talked about inspiration of the piece, but I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what that study was like.
I think I'm very in the moment when I do it, and then afterwards I'm like, how did I make that piece? But yes, I will try to answer that question. I mean, I do things like I had these field recordings, which I thought were quite rich musically, and so I'll do stuff like I'll take the recording of those tree roots being bowed, and I was interested in the harmonic structure of the sounds that are coming out, so I would analyze them, using my computer and various tools, sort of spectral analysis. And then once I have that material, I use it fairly freely, but I might also do something where improvising on these fallen trees or the dried branches of other trees, sort of playing it like a marimba. I was like, whoa, maybe I'll listen to that and analyze that for rhythmic patterns. But it's really just to give me material to play with, and I like just sort of finding material rather than sort of feeling like, ooh, what's the melody that expresses this? It's more gathering my materials like a collage or a quilt, and then working with them. And I'm trying to find material that is surprising to me, things that I wouldn't. If I'm just to improvise something, it can go to a bit of a predictable default setting. But if I'm digging and researching, then I uncover things that I wouldn't necessarily come up with myself.
So that's why your music is so unique and profound. It really hits with the personal message. Thank you very much, Juliet. Thank you for telling us a few secrets about this score and about your process and about you. We really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you in person as soon as possible, hopefully very soon.
Yeah.
And we all enjoy Fire Break in the concert hall. But thank you, everyone, for being with us. And thank you, Juliet.
Thank you, Gemma. It's a real treat to see you.
You too.